We're ready to rock. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's June 7th. I'd like to call the meeting of the Legislative Committee of the City of Middletown to order. Start by calling the roll. Mr. Massey? Oops. Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Ramkasoon?
Here.
And I'm still here, so 3 out of 5. Mr. Massey will be coming up shortly. He just had to run a quick errand, but we can begin. As you're aware, the clerk sent you some information. We have 3 items on our agenda. I'm going to call the first one in no particular order, the King Street item. Counselor?
Yes, sir. Well, I guess the simplest way to put this is if you thought that King Street walkway was a nice place to smoke grass, you were wrong.
Okay, any questions?
I can't put it any simpler than that.
All righty, I'll go around the table. It sounds kind of vanilla, but Alderman, anything? You good? Ms. Ramkasoon?
Makes sense to me.
Mr. Kleiner?
I'm in favor of it.
Sounds good.
Favor the grass or the resolution?
No, the no smoking, and back when it was the recovery place, they said no smoking within like 100
Okay,
feet of the
just-
building. So it's been no smoking for a
Just
long
making
time.
it clear.
Okay, Mr. Green?
I'm all good with it.
Mr. Witt? Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey is present, thank you. President Rodriguez? All good. Okay, thank you very much. We'll take item 2 in no particular order, planning board approval.
For the 3,000 square foot rule.
Whatever
And
you
basically
say.
what that means is that the mayor, and I agree, has recommended that instead of the planning board not being allowed to weigh in on whether or not a less than 3,000 square foot retail store should receive a special use permit with site plan approval, that we should now require that everyone that wants to open a retail store in whatever zoning district in the city, under 3,000 square feet, over 3,000 square feet, doesn't matter, should be required to go to the planning board with a typical application to, get a special use permit and provide site plan approval. And that's the simplest way to explain that.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
I think it's a smart idea.
Mr. Mayor, you have anything you want us to know about this?
As you know, we tried to make the DMU district primarily a little bit more user-friendly, but it seems to be abused. And we have, this is being done in conjunction with the permit issue also, which Theron and Alex can explain. So it seems like businesses were flipping and too quickly, that we didn't know who's in the business, what businesses operate. We had no contact information. And basically no one didn't understand some of the rules. Like we've had a couple businesses that have been taken to court because they felt that, well, I had a retail operation and then for the night I can have a party. And so the planning board serves not only the location to explain the use, but what not to do and what you can't do. So it gives us an opportunity to educate the property owner or the business owner. So I think it was well intended, but it didn't work out that way. So we'd rather go back to the planning board. Planning board then can list the items that the business owner needs to follow. We can collect all of their data, contact information for emergencies. We can explain to them what you can and cannot do. And we think it'll put a little bit more pressure on the planning board, but they do meet once a month, and we feel that we can get it done very quickly. Other communities take several meetings in order to get an approval. A basic retail operation here should be able to get approved in a month or so. So it's not that complicated.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, any questions?
Does it have to go to the pre-meeting, or can it go right to the planning board?
Well, it depends on the use. Like a simple retail operation, what we're seeing probably won't require too much of a meeting, but what we're, I don't know if you've seen this, for example, the cannabis bus that was in Wallkill yesterday. We have no idea what that is. And if it shows up in Middletown, how we're going to react to that if it parks in somebody's parking lot. But they got a sign up, I got pictures of it on my phone, ironically parked right outside of Kids R Us with a little placard for and the bus got marijuana planted on the side, what happens if that gets, brought into a parking lot, a private parking lot here? So we want the property owners to know all the rules. So if it's a simple retail operation, I don't think you'll have much of a problem at all. But if it gets too complicated, if you have tobacco shops, which seem to be the famous ones right now, I think you have more of a problem, but you'll have more scrutiny put on that type of operation. But what we want to make sure is we have a pizza shop that was approved that's now a tobacco and vape shop. So that's not allowed. So we have to be able to get better control, which you're going to hear part 2 of that is what Theron is going to be presenting to you. So the intent is not to delay progress. The delay is to have a little bit more control over the bad doers.
So for a barbershop, if a new barbershop comes in,
Barbershop is not retail, so
retail.
barbershop would have to go to the planning board anyway.
okay.
This deal specifically, what Theron's going to be proposing deals with all businesses, but what you're talking about right now is just strictly the retail under 3,000 square feet, which people were taking advantage of, calling themselves retail, but in essence, not really being retail. For example, a tobacco shop that's consuming on site, that's not a retail operation. Or a deli that is putting up tables, 2 or 3 tables, they would need to have an eating and drinking permit. And different fire laws kick in some cases too, depending on if you have seating, if you don't have seating. So we have better control over what's being proposed. Yes.
Who would do the
I was going to go around the
enforcement?
table, but that's okay, Mr. Kleiner.
Okay, thank you. Who would do the enforcement, Mayor?
Well,
on this, if there's a complaint or if they are violating permit?
The DPW, the permit will go through DPW.
Okay.
And we're going to make the permit going to the next issue is what you're talking about. We're going to make it very simple, as possible, like a $5 permit online with contact information. It's not going to be a complicated thing. In order to get the permit, you don't have to come to the planning board. The permit is going to be required for business A, that if you've been in business, you're going to have to file your permit. And it's going to have emergency contact information. I'll give you another example is the fire department responded to a gas leak at a local business. The lockbox didn't work. The contact information didn't work, so they had to break the door. So, and by fire code, I guess, they have to get into that premise. They can't leave the scene until they get into the premise. So having as much contact information as possible is the best thing for us, but also having the ability to control people from going from a bookstore, let's say, to a on-site eating and drinking establishment, thinking that they can sell product. If you're going to sell product and consume product on site, you need to get a different type of permit. And we're seeing that more and more. We had one person in court pled guilty that was renting out his business. And they paid a $500 fine in court because it turned out to be a real, inappropriate use. So we need to have that contact, so even on weekends, the police department will have access to that data, and they can call them, because this happened on a Saturday night, where, and we had no contact information, unless you're going to bring in, code people who may know the information. But it shouldn't have to be that way. The police should have access to that same data and call people.
Thank you. I'll go around the table. Mr. Massey? Mr. Witt?
No problem. I just had a question.
Sure.
So the people who have done this, switched businesses and not let us know about this, do we have the ability to now, do they have to now go back through the planning
No,
board?
no, if they're religious, if they're legitimate retail and were formed under the law, they're grandfathered in. They will have to register, though.
Okay.
So, but the person who switched from, some people don't have any legitimate business. They're just there as a retail, and then they were renting out for other events. They would have to go to the planning board in order to make it. And it also kicks in, then it becomes a public assembly. And then the fire department's required to do certain inspections on public assembly. So it's, every action triggers something. But we need to have access, 24/7 to information, contact information, and know what's supposed to be there. When the police ride by and they see, a group of people out in front of a business at 1 o'clock in the morning, they need to know that that business is permitted to be operating by the city. So that's the intent, is to just give us more data, more information, not to harass people, but to make sure that legitimate people are protected, and the neighborhoods, especially in some of the neighborhood businesses, that they're protected, that we can adequately address the issues that come up, especially in off hours. During business hours, it's not that difficult. We send an inspector, but off hours is when a lot of this occurs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Kleiner?
No, enforcement's, sounds good.
Thank you. Ms. Ramkissoon? Good. Okay. We're all good? Well, that's the next proposition on the agenda. So we're moving along at a rapid pace, kind of. And the last one, which is, as Mayor explained, a kind of a tandem, is I'll call it a business permit. And thank you both for representing the conversation.
Okay, as the mayor explained, I'll call this the Atkins Amendment. I give credit to the fire inspector for the idea. And basically, as the mayor said, it's to create a new database, because as it stands now, all the city really has in terms of a database is things the planning board has approved, or things that have gotten a building permit for whatever reason from DPW. That leaves out quite a lot of businesses that are, in operation out there, and we just don't know about them. This new type of business permit will give us a new database and allow us to, understand and be able to react to everyone that's doing business, whether it's a commercial or industrial business. Will have contact information, as the mayor said, not just during business hours, but after business hours. And if you change the business for whatever reason, and you don't have to go to the planning board, you have to contact the city anyway. So for businesses that have even legitimately not had to go to the planning board, this will require you to basically sign up with the city so that we know, where you are, what your hours of operation are, who we have to contact if we need to contact you. It's really a very simple kind of, theory to give the city a better way to handle issues that come up and that we don't have access to in our existing databases.
Great. I'll invite your colleague to, what would you like us to know that hasn't already been said, or that has been said?
Everything's been said.
Come on up, come on. You made the effort to be here. I'd like to make it worth your while. So what would you like us to know?
Just piggyback off of that, it's basically, it's gonna make our job a lot easier to track these businesses, to know who's operating what, when, where, what times. It'll especially make our job easier when certain people become in violation of certain laws. Then I have better contact information, especially businesses change hands a lot, change ownerships a lot. So now I can go to our database, find the owner, contact them directly. It'll also help with a few of the language barriers we may have with some of the businesses, because now I have a database with the owner's name and information that I contact directly. So,
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going around the table, Mr. Green, anything?
No, I think it's a good idea. I know there's been a little bit of conversation about, and I know this goes to Corporation Council probably, about people who have multiple false alarms in the same day, or multiple over even a couple days. I would hope that we'd be able to use this potentially to maybe enhance our laws going forward.
Sure, this could reach across a lot of different issues
so I
that
think it's
confront
good
the
to
city.
have. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Good.
you, Mr. Kleiner, anything?
No, so this doesn't affect the planning board, I mean, any business that has to go, because you're talking about a business and issuing a permit. But
That's absolutely right.
Totally separate from the planning board.
What has to go to the planning board still has to go to the planning board, and the 3,000 square foot rule that we talked about a few minutes ago, that increases the amount of businesses that do have to go to the planning board. This business permit that we're talking about is separate from that, and basically brings into our database those businesses that don't have to go to the planning board, whether it's because it's grandfathered, or it inherits a grandfathered position, or it's something that doesn't have to go to the planning board because that's the way it is in our zoning code. So it basically catches those businesses that don't have a planning board permit and gives us the ability to, keep track of what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's good. As long as people are aware of that, and they get a business permit, if it's something that's still in zoning, still requires a planning board.
Well,
that's-
DPW will
That's
cer-
made
DPW
clear.
will certainly not issue a business permit to someone who doesn't have appropriate planning board approval. There's no question about that. That cannot happen.
Okay, and will also list requirements, say that the planning board has put into their approvals?
Oh,
'Cause
absolutely.
That's been an issue in the past. Sometimes it's hard to go back to the original resolution if it was many years ago and say, well, it required this, or it said you couldn't do this. And sometimes, because the planning board doesn't have the power to enforce any of that. So that's, if this will help with that, it'd be a
Well,
good thing.
that's a good point. And the planning board doesn't have the power to enforce it, but the city has the power to enforce it. We have in our code, there is a violation section that if you are not in compliance with your planning board approval, whether it's because you have violated the approval or you violated the conditions in the approval, we have the ability to take you to court just for that. But this will give us the ability to not only see that, but in the business permit, there will be the planning board conditions. So you can rest assured that in this database, it'll be a combination of the databases. The planning board resolution and approval will be on top, for a better word, and underneath will be the business permit that has the contact information and all that kind of thing.
Very good.
Because the planning board approval might be from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but the business permit will collect the change of management, the change of ownership, the kinds of things that the planning board permit doesn't address.
Good idea. Thank you. I'm in favor.
Ms. Ram Kasoon?
All good.
Mr. Jean-Francois? President Rodriguez? Thank you very much, and thank you both for being present. I appreciate it. So I try to, out of deference to the group, have discussions as committee of the whole, but nonetheless, we are the legislative committee. I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we approve all three proposals as presented. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, the motion carries with approval of 4 out of 5. You'll note when you look at the agenda for the meeting, I've taken the liberty to put all three of these on the agenda as action items. I was led to believe they're somewhat time sensitive. If any members of the group finds that doesn't meet with your approval, please be reminded you're welcome to make a motion to table for further consideration or discussion. Need a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We ran over. I apologize, Mr. President.